Unsaid. This is a weekly conversation between four good brothers who are increasingly the better of friends. We join in a conversation with each other about pertinent topics that affect Black men, men in general, the ideas of masculinity, but we don't engage these conversations in a way that center anybody but us. We may center and understand and engage other folks, but we are here to talk about us as us. And this is a safe space, an accountable space, and a powerful space for the brothers to chop it up. If you are watching this right now, that's probably because you are curious. It may be because you don't have access to spaces where Black men are talking about what this means to them and what life is for them. And so we welcome you. Feel free to hop in the chat, send your comments in, ask some questions, whatever it may be. This is always a light conversation, but we get into some heavy topics. We always take this work seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously, as you can tell. And we're going to jump into this conversation about this question of strength. And a lot of times, let me just give a little bit of context. So over the last several months, all four of us have gone through various points of change in our lives that required for us to summon strength. And I'm not going to go into all the little micro definitions of strength. We can get into that different through our conversation. But Jamal, like, you have a newborn.
Right down here.
Like,
when I reach over here, that's the pacifier.
Like, you have another child. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like E, you have jumped into the entrepreneurial waters and are finding your way. And I know that has to do with everything from this is, let me just say this point of order. That's not E. That's not E. He just sent me a message.
Yeah, no, he did.
Yeah, frozen.
Yeah.
This is yeah. See. You got to get right with God.
I feel like if your Wi-Fi is better in the car than in your office, then I feel like that is a TikToker right there. Like, he paid for the premium mobile Wi-Fi, but then he got like the standard in his office is wild.
Yeah. Yeah, this is track phone heaven man right here. This is senior boost mode right here.
I appreciate you introing him, because me and Jamal, I was wondering, like, is he doing that for recording purposes?
Yeah,
for the episode? Because I was like, he ain't here, but I ain't go weed.
I know, when I started talking about E, I realized I wasn't talking to E. He keeps coming into the chat. I keep seeing his name pop up, and he just sent me another request.
But can I be real with you? That lets you know the plane that you go to when you do the intro, because you had to leave that plane and said, you said, hold on, I'll be right back.
Because I'm going right back to what I was doing. Y'all know I'm on and on.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't lose a beat. This is not my first rodeo. You know what I'm saying? These boots was made for walking. But we're going to keep going until E can hop on, because y'all know how we are. We just desert our brothers anytime they lacking.
Absolutely.
So, E, get it together, brother. Get it together. I see you keep sending in the request. I keep hitting accept. It's not really working. You might need to reset your modem or something. Go and get that Mac, that joint popped on. Defragment your hard drive. Get that C colon popping.
Call Best Buy. Call Best Buy. Tell them your warranty is up.
Did you work at IT?
No, man, I'm a millennial, bro. We was up there putting viruses on whole computers just trying to get some Puff Daddy songs.
No. LimeWire got us all, bro. It got us all.
Yeah, that's true.
Facts. That's a whole nother episode. Okay? They set us back at least 2 decades. We was almost there, and LimeWire gave all our computer viruses, and we couldn't come together like we wanted to. That messed us up.
There.
All right. I want to get to this. I want to make sure we get to this, y'all, because I know E got to leave even though he left. So he let us know in the text he need to leave it at 11:30. So I wrote this to y'all over the text thread. We got a little text thread, y'all, that we communicate on. This is the conversation I wanted to have. So let's dig into a few definitions and embodiments of how you see healthy and unhealthy types of internalized and externalized strength. Right? Strength can be defined in ways that are physical, right? There's physical strength, there's mental strength, there's psychological strength, there's spiritual strength. So I want to talk about how we see everything from our bodies as temples to our minds as either shelters where we just hold stuff in, or rivers where we let things flow. Our hearts is whether we're like here to be resolved and stoic and prepare our hearts for the world, and we just need to be as hard as we can, or whether we're supposed to be more pliable and soft and potentially also open to attack. And what you think spiritual stamina is and integrity is, and what the purpose of that is. So there's four different types there, right? So there's the physical, there's the mental, there's the the emotional, and then the spiritual. So let's just start up. How do you define what is the strength that you find yourself needing to summon at this point in your life most of those four?
You know, for me, it starts with stamina, especially like at this point in my life, having a daughter, nurturing a marriage, having a business to run, people on payroll that I feel responsible for as well. To summon the stamina that I have in me, but also recognizing that I'm a human being with finite energy, finite stamina, and a finite ability to endure. And that's something that I have I've had to come to terms with over the course of the past year or so, that I have a limit. I have a limit that I can reach, to where, like, if I don't recognize the limit coming up, I'll break. Through that recognition, I realized that there's been plenty of conversations about how men need to change our treatment of other genders, and rightfully so. You know, gender oppression benefits men. There's plenty of conversation about how men needs to change how we view and treat ourselves. I think that's rightfully so as well, because gender roles were not created with us in mind. But to me, for that conversation to stick, we also need to have a conversation about how other genders view and treat men, because we're not the only people who are indoctrinated into a world that has these harmful views. Other people have too. So it's one thing to encourage emotional vulnerability from a man, but it's another thing to be ready to receive it. It's one thing to encourage a man to take a break and be soft with himself. It's another thing for people to be prepared for that to be a reality and to be ready to accept that from a man. So we're not the only people who have unpacking to do around how we view and treat ourselves. And I think there's some encouragement that needs to happen for people of other genders to think about how they view and treat men when it comes to our own emotions, our own strength, and what they expect out of us.
Would you say that that's mostly a mental strength or a spiritual strength or an emotional strength, spirit, like, or all of them?
Good question. I'm going probably more emotional strength, but a little bit of all of them is what I'm thinking. Yeah, the emotional strength to recognize the needs within myself, the emotional strength to recognize where I'm strong and where I should be vulnerable.
Word.
Interesting. It's funny because I always listen to you all, then it evolves how I'm thinking about mine. I would say is heavily on the mental strength and emotional strength. In this chapter and where I am now, I see that especially being a social entrepreneur and being a leader and someone who has kind of opened up his life to the public and has committed to serving publicly. I think that it's so important to have mental strength because we find ourselves on these islands so often, and it's, even as just as a Black man, because we're experiencing so many things that we've deserved but we've been held from. It takes a lot of mental strength and emotional strength to hold that line, because a lot of the environments that I'm in, I got there because of my strength. And when I get there, and when I get in those rooms, and when I get into these dialogues, and when I go for it, I realize that I need even more strength to sustain it, because I don't have that support once I get to that point. And so, now in this chapter, it's heavily reliant on mental strength and emotional dexterity, because I don't want certain parts of my emotion, unfortunately, to show outside of my strategy. You know what I mean? Because if something taps an emotion too soon or in a dialogue, everything could go off the rails. You know what I mean? And so, for example, I had a interaction where early on, the Israel and Palestine conflict came up early. It wasn't even after, any type of, familiarity or anything like that. And, I had to just kind of, stop it and hold my line. You know what I mean? And say, hey, well, this is me and I ain't going for it. You know what I mean? And, it ended the interaction, but I think that's just, more of a small, portrait of this larger book that we're in and all of our chapters, because there's a lot of through lines between all of ours. But I would definitely say early on it was more physical. The first, I want to say 2.5 years. But now I'm heavily into, the mental and emotional strength. That is a big part of where I'm at right now, and the battle.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, when I think about it, it's wild to me when I think about how much, when I was growing up, physical strength was so important to me. Like I was naturally a real skinny dude. I was, 100 and what, when I graduated high school, I was 6'4", about 100 and I think 45 pounds. Um, so I was a real lightweight. I was modeling hanger racks basically, and I had a lot of insecurity around that. A lot of insecurity around that, and most of the insecurity that I had around that actually came from women. It came from the ways in which they, specifically especially in the hood, they looked at the male body as supposed to look like something that was strong, like physically strong. And physically strong meant physically big. That was what we saw in the cartoons. That's what we saw in the TV shows. That's what we heard from the aunties. That's what we heard in the music songs and the ain't no scrubs. You got to be physically strong with the checks. Like that was what I heard. And physical strength was so important to me. I got to college and my best friend, it was one of the only black people the first day of orientation. Y'all know how it is. I looked at that brother. I was like, that's gonna be my friend.
Yep.
I went to a PWI, and he was like just diesel, just swole, and I immediately started going to the gym with this brother, and I started to put on weight. I started to shape my body up, and these sorts of things. And it's interesting to me now how little space that occupies in my mind day to day.
Mm.
At 38 right now,
Okay.
because the last you've been waiting to do that. Hey, I was getting into this sentimental soft space, bro. You just hey, this is why we can't overcome as a people, man. This is why we can't have nice things, man.
Oh my God. I'm glad he ain't
Yo,
here to see this.
Oh
I
man.
wouldn't go get that moment too often. I've been waiting
Oh,
8
you've been
episodes for that.
waiting on that, bro. That was good. That was a good one. That was a good one. That was good, bro. Hey, don't be coming in the chat, Ernest. Boy, go home.
He said you old as fuck.
Go fix your Wi-Fi, boy. Go fix your Wi-Fi. Don't be sending me more requests.
He said I'm about to type out my addition to the show. You got me twisted.
You know what's messed up? I had to hit my boy Johnny up to know what ASL meant, because ASL when I was growing up was age, sex, location.
Yeah,
That was for the chat rooms.
yeah,
ASL don't mean that no more.
yeah.
And I
Nah,
was like, I'm old, bro.
man. Man. We don't know what none of that. Look, I be here in my office. They be my people be using slang and nicknames. I'm like, man, look, I'm gonna write it in y'all job description. Y'all gotta tell me, okay? Damn
Right.
that, okay? But now get back to your
Yeah.
soft space. I'm
So
sorry, I
so
had to do
so
that.
it's interesting now at this point in my life, right? At 38, um, the physical strength, to me is more about longevity than it is about appearance, right? Like
Right.
right now, I'm like, okay, I need good knees, good shoulders, good heads. I'm watching men die
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
too much. And that in my mid 30s, when I started to watch death, when I started to see black men die so much, that really shook me out of any real intentional desire to have a physical performance for a woman,
Okay.
like a physical appearance that was a performance for what they thought me. Like I just like ripped all that out. Now, after this is my 7th year, I'm going to my 7th year of entrepreneurship. After years of the way I hone myself for my craft of social impact and justice work and invitation towards love and justice, like I've honed. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was like, yo, I really sat down with some Aryan Nation and Clan dudes to talk about James Baldwin in the forest as a way to hone my verbal abilities to persuade people who had a rooted and vested hatred in who and what I was. But that's what I thought training was. I really stayed up for hundreds of hours every night watching MLK videos and Malcolm X speeches and James Baldwin tapes and all of this stuff to read and learn tape to better my craft as a speaker on these topics. Like I went all the way to the West Bank last month and ended up getting caught up in a war so that I could see with my own eyes like I don't really need the physical strength for who I am as Xavier anymore. I need a deeply powerful emotional, mental, and really now spiritual strength. I didn't used to think that this work was spiritual warfare. I thought that was some loosey-goosey mystical Christian stuff. When you start loving people and you start putting out invitations for them to do work that you are already doing, to consider changing the practices and the easy outs that a person who's been victimized says they have the right to, but righteousness says that will just create more violence. Like when you start doing that work, you're going to realize just how much you need spiritual strength. You're going to realize when you start the amount of rejection, when Christ said, like, the prophet is not welcome in his hometown, when you start feeling rejection, not because people don't like you, but because if they agree with you, they'd have to change who they were. And they know that you're right, you're inviting them to something that's right. That level of rejection, that type of conversation, that type of cadence, that type of training, you don't need to be buff for that. You don't need to be buff for that. You need to be mentally strong to be able to be enough and sufficient inside yourself for that. So I say that to say, like, right now, especially this last month, it took me a month to find my words. I just published my piece on Israel and the Hamas war on LinkedIn after 30 days of being home from the region. Like, it took me 30 days to do that, but the mental anguish of feeling ashamed of not showing up for all the protests and not, because that's my history. My history is showing up for people, but my role as a man today is as a guide and as a shield and a translator. And that requires a different type of strength that is very hard to understand if somebody's just looking at me as, oh, he cute. like I don't even care about that. like I got people who don't love life. Like that's sort of a thing. Like the need for spiritual strength to me is what is absolutely most important. I'm fighting something that's eternal. I'm fighting, the Bible said the poor will always be with you. I'm not fighting homelessness in Chicago right now. I'm fighting the fact that there has always been homelessness as long as humans have existed. And there is an eternal poverty that our choices create. And so what are the words for this moment I'm in? Oh, you got to be connected to something higher than you for that. You got to be.
You touched on something that I'm interesting. It's interesting to hear, and I want to hear Jamal's. But you talked about that. You acknowledge that transition. Of this is who I've been, and now this is who I am. You know what I mean? In terms of that strength, of what you used to be and showing up. You know what I mean? And now you're like, no, I'm not that anymore. Now I'm a shield, but I'm a guide. And for me, I always stopped to turn around. And I see, well, in my journey, I never had clear direction. And so whenever someone would stop me or something would want my attention or someone would need me, I never had anything to balance out my attention or my strength. I never said, well, no, this is bigger than that. I never had that. And so as a result, I always turned around. I always did. And I saw no problem with it. But as you said that, I realized I don't turn around much anymore. Not because I don't want to, but because of the role that I play, it's evolved. I'm not talking about just a fridge on the South Side anymore. I'm talking about how we're represented in the food system, and how we're either the dusty farmer or the fat consumer, but we're not. And so it's just when you said that, it's like, man, like I don't turn around too much because I'm doing an assessment as I'm walking. and I'm holding myself accountable to making the calls, and I'm holding myself accountable to reporting out. So now, as I'm pulled, not from those who really need my help,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, but from those who got used to just pulling on me. I don't turn around.
Yeah.
And I want to know, what have you noticed from your transition, Jamal?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because this time 2 or 3 years ago when I was starting up a food pantry, I was a guy who would do sorry for food pantry. I want to pass off to Dion, by the way. But I was the guy that would do an impossible amount of work and act like it was nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'd go down to the warehouse where they kept the fresh produce, and I'd load up this van, and I'd take somebody with me to Costco and get 3-4 carts full of food, and then we'd unload it, and then we just pass it out to everybody, and I just wouldn't blink, wouldn't act like it was nothing. When it was time to do work for the community, I put my chin down and I did work for the community, and there was no complaint. If it meant 16, 18 hours in that day, then I was going to do it, and I ran myself into the ground. So where you are, Xavier, where you are, Dion, where you realize my strength needs to change so that it can be of use to the world. Right now, I'm in a place where it's like my strength needs to change so I can be.
Right.
My strength needs to change so I can persist, so that I can live, so that I can wake up in the morning and be good with myself, so that I can feel whole. So I haven't even transitioned to a space where my strength needs to change so I can be better for the world. My strength needs to change so that I can survive. And that's the place that I've been in the past year. Is really learning that I do feel a full range of emotions, and sometimes I press them down. And sometimes I turn them into something else, and I turn it into drive or an urge to get something done, when in reality I need to sit down with that feeling that I have and figure out where it's coming from and deal with that instead of taking it somewhere else. And I'm still learning how to do that myself. I'm glad that I am. It means that I have slowed down in this professional realm and even in my community impact. But I know that I'm not doing it so that I have longevity. I'm doing it so that I can be me. And I know that it's gonna pay off in the long run, if only for my own health and well-being.
Yeah, I think what you're pointing on, Jamal. There's this one scripture that says, "Elders for their wisdom and young men for their energy." Some scriptures it says, "Young men for war, elders for their wisdom." I point to that because the powerful thing about time is that time is not a guarantee on any outcome. It is an opportunity to attach yourself to certain actions that may produce the outcome should you have the discipline to engage. People can get old. That doesn't mean that they are elders.
Absolutely.
You have to use your energy. You have to use your energy to have an experience of what you think the world is going to do and how it's going to respond and what it's going to be. You have to experience, you have to live what you think in order to see if it's true. Face whatever wall, obstacle, whatever that you're facing. It's one of the things I really love about, you see this a lot in young boys. They just be running into walls. They be running into stuff. They're testing. I think there's something about masculinity that continually is testing this world to see, what am I in this world? And it starts out physically. Little boys be jumping from playground things, and they be ready to scare the heck out of their parents. And all. I'm not saying that girls don't do this, but I'm just saying that as somebody who's worked with young men so much, like, I see that, and I've started to realize that never goes away. It just gets suppressed. That never goes away. That desire, it turns into entrepreneurship. It turns into traveling. It turns into, it never goes away.
Never.
It just gets suppressed. It gets contained. It gets caged. It gets shamed.
Yeah.
And then in the current, I would say, facile conversation about healthy masculinity, I think it looks at that expression, that physical expression of a person pushing their will into the world as a form of either domination, because it can show up in that way if it's unhealthy, or as a form of violence if it's rooted in insecurity. Because insecurity When you allow yourself to be ashamed, that's a very dangerous thing. And I think
Mm-hmm.
a man who's ashamed is a very dangerous man.
Absolutely.
Because if he internalizes that shame, it's going to turn into an insecurity. He's going to eat himself alive. If he externalizes that shame, it's going to turn into anger and eventually violence, and he's going to eat the world alive. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to identify shame and how it may be controlling you. Corner that demon and keep it on a chain and make sure you're always watching it. You can't get rid of it.
At
You
all.
can't get rid of it,
At all.
but you can keep your eye on it and make sure that you're not internalizing it so
Mm-hmm.
that it won't be a violence to you or a violence to the world. I say all of that because as we transition from using our energy as young men into having a testimony from the utilization of our energy, as we transition into middle age and eventually, hopefully, God willing,
God
into
willing.
becoming elders, we are responsible for being aware of the steps, not the steps that we are taking, but the steps that always must be taken. This is the wisdom in life. This is the wisdom. We must take the steps. I don't need to be out here like bench pressing 180. I said 180. I don't even want to hear what y'all bench press. Like I know y'all probably at the 250s, 270s. Anybody with Dion's lining at least 300. You know them.
Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Oh Lord.
Oh Lord. But we don't need to have that physical strength. And here's the challenge: when that has been your identity, it also can become your shame because you don't know how unless you do the work of not just transitioning what you are, like Jamal, you were just saying, like, I'm trying to use strength to be. I'm not even looking at pushing out into the world. I'm not looking at you're in this transition moment. But if your identity has always been in the, I'm showing up whenever, however, for my community,
Right.
they also depend on you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And they
But
may have such a history for that they push you into shame because you're no longer doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't find that. Oh, go ahead, Jamal.
And that's a part of that conversation about how the world has to be prepared to accept different types of us, different types of men, different expressions of emotional strength and vulnerability, because we're not the only people who were indoctrinated to believing that we should show up all the time and we should be the first one through the door. The rest of the world was indoctrinated into that belief as well, and it takes some unpacking out of everybody if we're going to be comfortable in a world where that's not always the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I see it's crazy because as you're talking and saying you can get old and not become an elder, then we see this past generation that, saw the diminishing of the male, especially black male, in everyday life. And I don't find it a coincidence that, you know, suppressing that energy, that was the generation that didn't get a chance to
Yeah.
try. And
Yeah.
so as a result, our generation was lost because we didn't have the elder that was allowed to try. And so now, we essentially have to, widen the path for an entire generation that was supposed to graduate after trying. And so there was never, and for me, I looked at that when I started and I kept trying. And when people kept telling me not to try, I kept trying because I said, something feels right about this. There's no guaranteed payoff, but nothing, nothing I do as a black man today has a guaranteed payoff.
Right.
And there's no guarantee that I'll make it to be an elder. And so my idea of an elder until we fix and we can luckily and God willing grow to be those elders, my elders are not as old as they historically have been. You know what I mean? And now I have to, instead of seeing the grizzly beards and seeing the older men who tried and then settled, and then now they chill and they sit on their porch. But we remember, and everybody else remembers when they tried, and they remember that they were active and they got that energy out. Now I have to look at some who are younger, and we don't have the stories of what happened and how it aged, and so now we're all kind of simultaneously reporting to each other in the moment. Because I'll tell you this, in total transparency, I've never thought I would live past 50, even now. And it went from growing up in violence and uncertainty to, like you said, seeing people in our work die before 50. And now I'm in this place where I question, I said, how did I end up here again after so much difference? You know what I mean? And then I started to examine, and what you said just really kind of, brought it on, where it's like, no, that energy of trying as a man and as a black man is so lost above us. And they're scattered. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's just like you saying that. It's just, I'm looking at how we're trying to self-correct in the moment. While Jamal is trying to be, he's also an elder to, the generation after us, who has very few to cling to as an elder, that has that respect, that gets to try, and we know what we mean, to them, while we're also trying to mean something to ourselves. And it's just crazy. I'm just, that's a lot. You said a lot, and it was like, man, my brain just started exploding at how I fill in certain things that should stay blank. You know what I mean? So.
I'm as you say that, you mentioned how the elders never got a chance to try, and that also fills me with so much respect for those elders who look at us trying new ways and support us, and maybe don't fully understand but stand behind us and know that something has to change. Because it's very easy to say this is how I came up and this is right, but to see us try new ways to be men, to raise our kids differently, to interact with the world and other genders differently, and to give a full blessing of that, fills me with respect for those people who came up a different way and never got that opportunity, but still want to allow that opportunity for us.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I love about a faithful life, like a faith-led life, my pastor talks about this a lot, is that it redeems the time. Dion, in your voice, I could hear a little bit of what I would call lamentation, right? The difference between sadness. Sadness is situational. Lamentation is conditional. Situation, like I'm sad about the fact that like my aunt died 2, 3 days, months ago. I lament the fact that we all die.
Mm.
Like when we're talking about a sadness that affects everything, that is just a part of life, that's lamentation. And that requires a certain humility and maturity in our emotional moderation of ourselves to understand how to not let things that are necessarily lamentable become so present and primary in our lives that they
Mm-hmm.
break us, because these
Mm-hmm.
are things that you can't change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like I tell my team, like, we can't fight things that don't move. We
Mm.
fight
Mm-hmm.
things that do move. You can't fight a wall. You
Mm-hmm.
can fight someone trying to climb over it. You
Mm-hmm.
have to fight things that can move, things that you can change. But that requires a humility to say that you can't change everything. And that then requires a wisdom to know, where do I find out about the things that are immutable, that are not about me, that
Mm.
I am not the God of this world. I'm not the God of this moment. I have to be curious enough to say that I am not big enough to have created the very problems that I am now in time to see, but will
Mm-hmm.
be in time because it's always been, like homelessness and
Absolutely.
Come
poverty,
on.
right?
Absolutely.
These sorts of things are real. And so, but that should create a peace in our spirit. It should create a peace in our spirit to know that we can't change something. In our pride, and this is where mental strength and emotional maturity comes in, from a spiritual grounding, in our pride, because we make ourselves accountable as men for I'm gonna get everything that they ever took from Granny,
Mm-hmm.
like Kanye said. We want to go back in time and redeem that time as vengeance. That's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's not possible. What you can do is redeem the time as repentance. Repentance is changing ways so that the harm doesn't happen again. And so when we talk about breaking generational curses and taking on generational assets, it requires the wisdom to be able to discern the
Absolutely.
differences between what is an asset, what couldn't Granny get, and what did they take from Granny. But if I hold what they took from Granny in my heart and make that my job as her grandson, the vengeance is going to eat me
Eat your
alive, and I'll
life.
constantly
Absolutely.
be chasing a profit that was for the past. There is a
That may not
profit.
even be there.
There is a
Yep.
thing for us today, and we're neglecting that because of our anger about what
Absolutely.
happened to our people, what happened to our families, what happened to our mother, what our daddy didn't get when he got out of Vietnam. We are looking at the past not with respect, we're looking at it with reverence, meaning to make it
Yeah.
holy. And that is a
Mm.
very dangerous thing. That is the suicide of the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah.
That is where you start to stymie innovation.
Yeah.
That nostalgia is the death of innovation. And it's because
Well,
it because it surrenders imagination. It says we should only be looking historically, never futuristically. And that's why I think it's so hard for a lot of people in the day and in their time to really, really grasp the opportunities, because they're not looking for opportunities. They're looking for healing.
Come on.
But
Yeah,
by grasping the opportunities and
absolutely.
seeing the gains you get from being faithful in living them and living your steps, it will redeem the time that Granny never got. It will
Absolutely.
honor her to see that her legacy lives in you, even if it couldn't live fully in her. It will redeem the time.
And look how long it takes too, you know? Like it took me 3 years, you know,
Yeah.
just to find a way out. And then here's the thing, I don't even know how I found my way out. And I looked up and I was not mad anymore. You know what I mean? And I was pissed. You know what I mean? If you listen, Jamal talking to y'all is like the yin to my yang. Is listen, like I'm like, no, damn that. We going back. But I look
That was
now.
yesterday. We had a conversation like that
Oh yeah,
yesterday.
absolutely.
I'm like, oh, I'm cool with it. No worries.
He was like, I'm strapped. Like fuck that. But you know, I looked up and I was so dark, and it got to the point where there was no joy,
Mm.
there was no future, there was only the past. Literally, like I only woke up and turned around and said, "Give it back," and everything that you said is so true. And we look at that time, and I'm thankful now because like no, it's like I just wake up and the future and forward and now is so beautiful. You know what I mean? And you know that soil I can't tend the soil 40 years ago. I
Right.
can't. You know what I mean? And you're so right, and it's so dangerous, especially as a black man, to be in this environment and not know you're angry. It's
Mm.
so dangerous. That is that to be unknowingly angry and unprotected
Yeah.
is 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 so scary because it just gave me chills because it triggers so much of us. And like you said, when we act on it, we have no protection.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you know, I'm looking now. You know what I mean? And I know, you know, a year ago, I might have been doing good work, but I was so hurt and so
Yeah.
angry. And I was so exposed and I kept learning and I kept, you know, going deeper and I kept looking back and I said, no, that is ours and it's mine and why not? And I'm not totally there at understanding how I got here. You know what I mean? And I think that's why I've also been uncomfortable or comfort with my discomfort with you all. It's because I'm not supposed to know. And you know what I mean? Like I'm on this mission to not only like stay present and love now and love the future, but like, you know, like you said, like reconcile with like, no, that wasn't mine,
Yeah.
you know, to chase and to get and to take back. And so that's crazy. It's crazy.
I need to hang on to that thing that you said, how dangerous it is to, as a black man, especially be angry and not know that you're angry, to be hurt and not know that you're hurt. Because then everything that you enact, you can rationalize for yourself as the best thing, as what is needed, as what is owed to me, as the best way forward. But in reality, it's vengeance. In reality, it's a lashing. In reality, it's taking poison and hoping other people die because we're not seeing the driving force of that is not what's good for us. The driving force of that doesn't build. The driving force of anger and pain is only destroying us from the inside. I'm holding on to that one forever, Dion.
Yeah.
Man, listen. And,
Hey,
I mean,
Jamal
heck,
put up a video. Jamal put up a video like 3, 4 days ago. That was one of the most powerful takedowns on eye for an eye and fire for fire that I've ever seen. Y'all check out his page. He put up a video on it, and it was just I was like I was like taking notes, man, because you're right, and this anger thing is so important. I want to just call this out that I learned this lesson when I was like 25 years old, and I had this young man named Larry Wright. He was my mentee back in North Lawndale. He actually, unfortunately and tragically, he was just killed in North Lawndale this year. But I met him back like 15 years ago when he was a shorty, and I remember trying to walk with him through his FAFSA in the computer lab at our youth center. And Larry, the first day I ever met him, he punched me in the chest. Like that was his like, welcome to the job, mother. Like, like he was, and he looked like he was born fresh out too. Like that was the thing. Like Larry was like, Larry looked like he was like born at 26 in Cali. Like he was like, oh, you think the dark will save you? Like I
I
was
didn't
born
see
in the
light until I
dark,
was a mere man.
molded by the dog. He was Bane.
Oh
Like
my God.
Larry was, and I'm Batman. I'm just,
What is wrong with that?
like our success has broken you. Victory has defeated you. But Larry taught me so many lessons, and one of the lessons he taught me about anger was the day that I refused to let him leave the youth center. I refused to let him leave the youth center until he finished his FAFSA. Because I was like, you are going to send in these college applications. Like, bro, like he ain't had nobody in the crib looking out for him. He ain't had nobody out in Lawndale on the streets looking out. I was like, yo, you going, because you mine. You my little bro. Like, you are going. And bro, it was like 10 o'clock at night. We had been there for like 3-4 hours, man. And he still hadn't gotten that far. And he would start cussing me out, man. You ex, man, I'm tired of this, man. You can't keep me up in here. And I was like, Larry, until you finish this, we not leaving. And then I stepped back and I was like, what's going on here? What's going on here? Why is this young man thrashing like this, cussing me out when I'm his boy? I'm like, I've been your mentor for how long? Like, you seen me show up in your life in how many different ways? And you gonna cuss me out over a FAFSA? You gonna threaten me over a FAFSA? You punched me in the chest, and I didn't sue you. I didn't file a police report. I went to the gym.
You had to go somewhere.
Gotta go somewhere. Because as a man, if I respond physically to a young man, there's only a couple ways this is gonna go. He's either gonna go to jail, and I'm gonna put another black man in jail, and I ain't doing that.
Absolutely.
Or I'm gonna fight him, and now he's gonna see me as an enemy, and I'll have to fight to be seen as a friend again.
Yep.
I'll destroy more relational currency with that young man. So I'm gonna have to be strong enough to absorb his hit and return it in a different energy. And that's one of the things that I think keeps breaking our young brothers is that people want to return fight. They're like, man, he just did this, he just did that. We need to lock these boys up, put them under the cage, put them under the prison, send them out. They ain't nothing but some hoodlums and hooligans and all this. I was like, no, you need to be strong enough to take the hits they're giving and understand that their anger, this is what he taught me, their anger is a form of unmet expectation. And so I started jumping in. I'm like, yo, Larry, what did you expect? Like, what did you expect? I thought this was gonna be easier, man. So I was like, yo, it's just a couple questions about like, yo, expected family contribution is 0. Okay, I know this, right? Like, write 3 paragraphs about why you want to go to college, and a list of colleges you want to go to. And then I realized it was the literacy thing. It was the literacy thing. It was literally the language. It was too complex. It was a literacy thing. It was the ability to read. He was hiding that by thrashing and externalizing it violently because there was an internalized shame that was manifesting as insecurity. But if you start by saying when men are reacting physically, spiritually, emotionally, or otherwise in immature or violent ways or insecure ways, there is probably an expectation that was under there about who they were supposed to be for them or what they were supposed to be for you. And if we get curious about that, we can be kind enough to help them on their healing journey, whether that is spiritual, physical, or otherwise. The challenge is, I think there's a perception in the world because of how the world internalizes patriarchy and misogyny. They don't think they should be trying to help men who are insecure. They don't think that they should be the conduit to healing, or they shouldn't be the messenger of grace to men because men shouldn't act like that, even if they're saying men need to be better than that. We refuse to be the Samaritan on the road. We refuse. And so the world is full of robbers.
The whole world needs to learn. The whole world needs to learn that we have all learned negative things about men that are impacting us all, and it's our responsibility to learn and unlearn, to teach, and to be different as men and for men, so that the things that we talk about can stick with people, so that we can actually see these ideas make material changes out in the world, as opposed to pointing fingers and blame and continuing to shame people and hoping that makes them change, because that's never worked and it's never going to work.
Yeah. Even the blame and the shame is their unmet expectation. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, if you just
Yeah.
match insecurity with shame or with violence, all you're going to get is an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. Somebody's going to
Absolutely.
have to absorb this, take the high road and say, all right,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take your hit today, or I'm gonna take your hit for the year, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna reach out and love you deeply in a way that you can't love yourself. And though I deserve better, I am also stronger. This is where in the scriptures it says, when you are strengthened, strengthen your brother. Once
Absolutely.
once you are strengthened, go strengthen your brother because he ain't strong, and you have a little bit more strength now.
Yeah. She felt you. She felt you, X. That's it. She was like, yeah, she said goo goo. Okay.
Goo goo gaga.
But you know what? And you speak to a moment I had recently, with someone very close to me. And it was that those unmet expectations. And I saw the growth and I saw, my ability to take it because I understood it had nothing to do with me. You know what I mean? And I, well, I'll say this because, this is our safe space, but it was my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, she couldn't understand that her anger had nothing to do with me because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't act or say anything in the interaction. And it showed me, just like you said, when you said, okay, hey, what's going on here? And the more peace and the more grounding and the more, spiritually, mentally, emotionally comfortable and stronger I've become, the more I've been able to kind of intercede with myself in these moments.
Yeah.
And it's so comforting to not have to, like Jamal said, it's way more comfortable to not have to match it. It's way more comfortable to not have to think I have to do that. And I've never lived a life like this. And I've never cultivated a community to do it. And so now, holding myself accountable, like you said, not just to myself, but to making my brother stronger. And to, like having that set standard of, I'm a macho energy makes no fucking sense at all
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
And me becoming you now makes no sense. So now I'm with y'all, man.
Yeah.
But it touched on a moment I've had recently. Um, and it allowed me to not let it become something that it did not need to be.
We're talking a lot about anger. I think something that I think is important for us to understand about anger is especially about all people, but especially about men who we've been socialized to show that as a primary form of emotion. But anger is a secondary emotion.
Right.
Anytime that we have anger, there's usually something underneath that anger that is causing that anger to be. Now, I think it's important to understand that about myself. If I am angry, what am I feeling? Actually, I feel rejected. I feel inadequate. This is triggering something in me that is not about this moment. But also to recognize that about other people when we see anger. If you see anger in that, what is it that they're actually feeling? Or are they
It's
feeling
something
inadequate?
underneath. It's a symptom.
Yeah, it's a symptom of something that is underneath that. And the second thing that I had to recognize about myself is that people don't make me angry. Actually, nobody makes me feel any emotion. If they can have an action that's going to trigger something inside of me that connects to my past, that connects to something that's deeply held within me. And that's what's helped me to stop placing that emotion on another person. And that's what's helped me to say, you know what, this actually isn't about them. It's a feeling that they've triggered from way back, and I need to find a way to deal with that myself. But anger is a secondary emotion. People don't make you feel anger. There's always something underneath.
I think that's a tough. Jamal, I agree with you, man, and it's a hard pill to swallow, um, because I mean, we don't come into this world knowing how to emotionally regulate. We don't come into this world knowing how to engage at all. We come into this world as children's babes. Like we come into whatever the maturity of our parents is. And then in that creation of projections and traumas and not like just assuming like, oh, if I'm just a nice person, then I did my job. Right? Right? Like that's enough. Like I do a lot of work around diversity, equity, inclusion training. I can't tell you how many 50-year-olds right now do not have the skills. I didn't say didn't have the will. Do not have the skills to engage in a conversation about ideological or identity-based differences in the workplace and about to lose their jobs because of how they speak about the Israel and Hamas war. The same thing was true when George Floyd was killed. We saw it wasn't just that people didn't want to have conversations. They would get so triggered in the conversations. And you got one group of people who are like, anything about this is going to trigger me, my anxiety. And some of that is valid, but you got to understand when there's a difference between you are trying to create a healthy space for yourself versus you are running from facing a conversation that you must grow a strength to engage, even for your very life. This is not about making safe space anymore. This is about you having a place and a permission to run. And that's not the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's not the same thing. And telling a person who's hurting that they can't lay down there is not a form of gaslighting. It's actually a form of help and liberation. And this is the challenge. You can say you're telling me to do more. You're demanding a resiliency of me, an emotional stamina or a mental clarity or an intellectual discipline or a certain performance that I don't have the strength for. And it's fine to say you don't have the strength for, but we must ask the question of how will you be strengthened? Where do you have it? Where is that? And are you willing to pull yourself out of these environments and actually do the work? Like I just went silent for 30 days. This is my first time talking on social media in 30 days. Most people are accustomed to me popping stories every day, putting up posts all the time. Other than the unsaid, I've been quiet. And that's because I know the importance of not speaking before my heart is settled. Because you'll just put out something that either will not be true for you today or tomorrow. You'll put out something that responds to the pain that others have, that is not a power that you have to resolve or engage, or you will make yourself accountable for things that you can't deliver on. And so it is better to have discipline and to be quiet and to not see quietude as a form of disloyalty or as something that should produce shame, but see it as the presence of wisdom. And to be capable enough to grow your strength enough to know that I feel like I'm letting my friends down, but what I'm actually doing is strengthening myself for the bigger fight. Everybody over the last 30 days has been it's just been statements of scrambling, talk, show. And sure, for some that are strong enough, but we must also have a community mindedness that allows us to know that everyone can't carry the water at the same time.
But I will say this. I think that it's also important as you talk about, that stillness that you had, understanding that at some point in that 30 days, you drew a line. You know what I mean? And you drew that line and you required those that stayed to either be still with you or allow you to be still.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because, not only how, will you be strengthened, but how will you be informed?
Right.
We're not asking ourselves these, because that's the thing. I think that, I look to not necessarily us as being the only things in your life that allowed you to be still, but I look at the moment that we all acknowledge that you allowed us in. And when you did, us understanding the severity of that moment and being okay with that stillness. Because there's so many different interactions and so much transaction in terms of energy and intent, even when you mean well. You know what I mean? That it could be like construed in a way that allows you to move when you're not ready to move. And so, we also have to acknowledge that, there is no stillness in a lot of people's lives. Those of us who we're following, who we're in community with, and those who follow us. And so also, extending and allowing that grace because they don't know what stillness is. And it's scary.
It feels foreign.
And it's, you know what I mean? And no, but not just the foreign, but like, remember, like the symptoms. It's hard to sit in fear and anger. You know what I mean? Like we talked about. Shit, fear and anger is pretty much, the two things, the two symptoms that come up on a daily basis in this era right now. You know what I mean? And I don't look to the moment the things that I didn't know when I get angry or when I get scared now. I can safely say that I think about what I've learned from you all. And I think about, like that piece that I have. But I just know that like when we created this thing, it's so unique and it's such a unique space. It's almost as if like we're sitting in a bubble and we're looking at the opposite of how we chose to be still. You know what I mean? And
but that's what friendship
fucking
is
scary.
supposed to be. That's what friendship's supposed to be. That's what fellowships are. That's what a squad is supposed. We're supposed to be a bubble.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be a bubble. We're supposed to be a group of people. I see I'm gonna put him back in once he hops back on. But we're supposed to be set aside. We're supposed to do that. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. Like when it's just like a great relationship. It shouldn't feel like how the rest of the world is. It should be a sanctuary. It should be a peace. That's one of the things that I think a lot of men, when they falter, when they fail, and when they're so upset with their personal, intimate relationships, it's because it is not a peace. It feels just like the world.
I agree.
It feels just like outside.
You
Inside
talking?
feels just like outside. Something off.
You talking?
This is
You
supposed to be
talking now?
different. But that's only possible if, like what you said, if people are coming into that inside space knowing that they're there as a choice. And I think this goes into one of the powerful things that I really increasingly I love about the brothers and about men in general. Like our choice, when we choose, we take a long time to choose sometimes. we don't have clocks like I think everybody else has a clock. We are so discerning in our responsibility in our choice that we take a long time to choose. And that can be seen sometimes. I think the world interprets that as immaturity, indecisiveness, a lack of stability, a lack of seriousness.
Or
but
even
what
caring.
it is
Yep.
a lack of caring. But what it actually is my choice when I've made it will be my choice. And upon that rock, I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not stand. Like I'm not moving once I've made my mind up. And you're going to see an unleashing,
dude. I told you about it yesterday. I said, hey, listen, I love who I love, and listen, once I'm there and we're there,
I'm gonna hunt you down. I'm chasing like the people that I love in my life right now. They see it, man. I'm chasing them down.
Man, listen.
I was like, I know you. I was riding my bike up to the. I'm like, look, I don't care how. I'm gonna get to you. Like it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen because I have chosen.
Yeah.
My father once told me this. He said, "X, you got one choice in life." He's like, "I had a choice too. I had your mama. I chose your mama." And he always said this. And when I was a boy, I didn't understand. As a man now, I see. He would say, "I didn't choose you. You are the effect of my choice." And so you need to understand when I prioritize my wife, that's because she's more important to me than you are as her mama. Or as her son, rather. Your mom, she's mom to you. She's wife to me. You wouldn't even have the ability to say mom had it not been for my choice. So I need you to respect my choice. And don't ever speak against, this is whenever I would raise my voice to my mama, don't ever speak against my wife. Because I will engage you as her son, not as my partner. And when I was a boy, I was like, this nigga don't love me. He don't love me at all. He don't even like me. Like I was so hurt. Oh, I was hurt. As a man now, I see the strength in what he was saying, but I also feel the feeling that he felt of the importance of his choice and the fidelity and integrity that must come with it once you have made that. And there are people that try to force a choice. There are men that are afraid of not choosing fast enough. They're afraid of losing something, the opportunity cost of not choosing, that the window will close, that the opportunity will be gone. They are afraid of that, and they force their choice. They force their will into the world. They are that boy jumping from the jungle gym. They are that child running into the wall. They are those people building up the little Lego blocks and then just smashing them down. And you got to understand, if you take your time, little homie, if you take your time and you grow in wisdom, it will never, ever, ever, ever fail you. And that, if we have a world of wise men, if we can build a world of men who embrace wisdom, women will be safer. Men will be more gentle. Children will be more provided for. The world will be better if we embrace wisdom, but it requires humility to do that.
That's why we feel the difference when it's 3 or 4 of us. You know what I mean? And we feel that power and we feel that comfort, and you let the guard down. And you can have that, you can feel the humility. You can feel that, like, man,
that's when
we're all
people who are carrying what you can't let your guard down on people who ain't carrying what you carrying. They don't understand.
Of course.
They gonna ridicule. That's what I'm saying. Like, iron sharpens iron. Wood don't sharpen iron.
Yeah.
It's burnt up in the forge to strengthen the iron. Like you got to be iron to one another. And that's sometimes the hard thing, when, like, the last 2 years was the first time in my life where I felt jealousy towards other men who I felt were getting more, doing more, whatever, because I was, like, emotionally wrestling. I was like, man, they getting up, they getting put on, I ain't getting it. And I remember checking, I was like, X, what is it, boy? You ain't no jealous man. What is this foreign feeling? Why are you coveting what your brother has?
Yeah.
And I had to face that. And
I think we all have, dude, literally, like I think we all have
growing.
and listen, dude, bro, when you don't get that grant,
Bro,
you feel me? When you don't listen, bro, I'm talking about,
how's he better than me?
Dog, I didn't get the grant, and then the one they got was like 3 times bigger. But you're right, and I think you also speaking to that is extremely important. It's like, it's okay to speak about that moment where you were lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I lost myself for a minute, because I think especially as entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs, like, dude, and you know what I did? When I know I can't take it, I'll click the little 3 dots at the top right of the post, and I say, I don't want to see this.
Yeah,
I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. Listen,
I don't want to become a hater, because if you don't mute it, you're gonna become a hater.
Listen, and I feel it, and so it's a process. And now I've known. I said, at the onset, I know how I should feel.
Right.
And if I have to respect myself and love myself enough to know if I'm not there, immediately correct it.
Immediately.
And beyond respecting and loving yourself, you don't know that you've been lost unless you've gotten back on track. And you don't know that you're acting out of jealousy unless it is not the norm for you. There are so many people living in that space. They're living in that lost space. They're living in that space of jealousy, of envy, of competition, that they don't know anything else. And they don't know to mute that conversation. They don't know when they're acting on that feeling, because that's a norm for them. It takes that growth, that level of strength in order to recognize that.
Yeah. Y'all, look, man. I know we always say this is gonna be a 60-minute convo. We at 70 right now. This is going so good, man. I know it's gonna be up on YouTube soon.
Hey, E in the comments going nuts.
Straight crime that IG just did this to E right now, man. E, we can still see your fro, man. We know you got the core. You were at Cornell West for us today. It was channeling the spirit, my brother, and all that, man. I'm so upset that you weren't able to join, but I'm also thankful for what fruit was harvested today. You know, Dion, is always on you to close us out. So go ahead and take us home, man.
All right, okay. This has been the Unsaid. Thank you for joining us. I don't have a vest on like X. I'm holding a baby like Jamal. And I'm not in the comments hating like E. But we love you all. We appreciate you all. Please, when you get a chance, follow all of us, okay? Ernest Krim the third, not Junior, because that's his daddy, the third. Jamal Cannon, Xavier Ramey, and I'm Deion Dawson. Please follow us on every platform as well as the Unsaid. And then go on YouTube, click subscribe, hit alerts because this will be dropping on Sunday. And then, thank you for joining us for this, a little over an hour. We hope that we gave you something to take back and activate. And until then, please love yourself, love the people around you, and have soul.
All right, y'all.
All right, y'all. Oh, wait, whoa. Today is sponsored by Murray's Hair Grease, okay? By one can for one family for one generation, okay? Murray's Hair Grease, thicker than anything you can think of, okay?
I'm out of here.
All right, guys, man. I love y'all, man. Be safe.
Peace and hair grease.